Today on 9 to 5 Tactical, we will be doing a full breakdown of my SIG MCX Spear LT. We'll go over a high-level summary of the specs on the Spear LT. It is a 11.5 inch barrel. The overall length is 29.5 inches. It is chambered in 5.56. There are other variants out there you can get that are chambered in 7.62 or 300 blackout. It has a cold hammer forged carbon steel barrel, fully ambidextrous controls with the mag release and bolt release on both sides, as well as the safety selector, 1913 Picatinny rail adapter on the back. The rifle by itself weighs about 6.9 pounds naked, and it has a MSRP of about $2,600. Generally, in our reviews, we would have a unboxing style part of the video, but I have since then thrown out the box. But what you usually get is a cardboard box just with the rifle by itself, no irons, just a bare rifle, as well as one Gen 3 PMAG. Now this next segment is supposed to be about why I chose the MCX Spear LT over other AR platforms on the market, but if you want to skip ahead because you don't care about my sob story, you can see the chapter segment for why I have these attachments set up the way I do and why I chose them. Further down the line, we have the review and my experience with the rifle itself. Okay, so why did I choose the MCX Spear LT? Well, I did some extensive research on DI versus piston platforms. I understood the pros and cons of each. Obviously, with a piston driven gun, it's going to weigh a bit more than a DI gun, as well as it will have a better gas management than DI with a suppressor. Obviously, you can get to the argument of well-tuned DI versus piston guns, but that's a different argument for a different video. Obviously, because I knew I was going to be running my next AR platform with a suppressor, I chose the piston-driven route, and of course that was what came with the MCX Spear LT. So with already choosing the piston-driven route with the MCX, another reason why I chose it is because it is kind of aesthetically pleasing. I do like how the overall gun looks, especially the handguard. I love the unique design of it, and with the LT, of course, it has extra cuts up there to reduce the weight compared to the Virtus model that's out there. And of course, the color that it comes in is FDE. If you watch our previous videos, I kind of love FDE color. I know other people on the channel say it's gay. Well, I'm gay. But yeah, you basically see me wearing like my UPS delivery outfit, like the 9 to 5 Tactical hoodie, which we're going to be releasing sometime this spring. But it's basically like a full FDE kit that I'm wearing unintentionally, but I just like the colors. I also chose the 11.5 variant because I wanted a more compact rifle. I didn't see the reason why I need a 16-inch rifle, and of course I wanted it to weigh lighter than the 16-inch variant because the MCX already weighs a lot. I also chose it because it has fully ambidextrous controls. No, I don't really use the left side mag release very much, but when it comes to malfunction clearing, it is nice to have fully ambidextrous controls because it allows you to shoulder it and then still lock back the gun on the right side here with the ambidextrous bolt lock and release. And then the last thing that I really liked about the MCX was the rear, how it was a bufferless system, so it allows you to shoot without having it shouldered. You can like fold it and shoot it if you're in a very compact space. Of course, that's not very realistic. I've never been in that situation, but my main purpose of it is ease of storage. So when I actually store this in my Pelican case, I don't have to disassemble the MCX. I can just fold this and then put it in there. So with those reasons listed of why I chose the MCX Spear, obviously if you did any research on the internet, you know that the MCX Spear LT release was not without flaws. So of course the 60-inch variant had the bendy barrel issues. It wasn't common or really happening on the 11.5-inch variant, so I was okay with that gamble. However, I did notice that the handguard specs were actually noticeably under torqued. I did I think it was like 45 pound inch or 50 pound inch, and I was able to get a almost full rotation on my Wheeler screw set when I set it to 50 pounds, but I'm not really shooting at more than 50 yards on a regular basis to notice those shifts if it was happening. I also knew the MCX Spear LT was a chonker. It's definitely heavier than other piston guns on the market as well. It's definitely heavier than almost any DI or high-end DI gun on the market, but I went in knowing that, and I was like, well, I'm pretty strong guy myself and I think I can shoulder it, but I actually think I regret that later. However, I did run into more issues that were rather catastrophic on the Spear LT. And if you're interested in that, stick around. So I'm more of an ass man, so we're going to start at the rear of the gun. What I have mounted on the rear here is the Magpul SLK brace. But in all seriousness, this is the SLK stock. This is their cheaper version. There's another SLK that has a QD mount, but that was an extra 80 bucks just to have a QD mount, and I already have a QD mount here at the rear right behind the grip, and I actually don't mind it being mounted right here. Actually, to run this stock, you actually have to get the SIG rear 1913 stock adapter, which acts as a buffer tube, pseudo buffer tube here to mount any stock or brace, like an SBA3 brace, which is pretty popular, or any other Magpul stock on the market, which kind of sucks because the normal stock that comes with it, which we don't have today, is just like this thin, like stock that it's like a skeleton stock, and it's not adjustable, and it kind of sucks to shoot with. But yeah, for the rear, that's why I chose the 1913 adapter, because if I ever have a preference change and I want to swap out to a thinner profile or even thicker profile stock, or one with an adjustable cheek pad, I could. For the charging handle, this is obviously ambidextrous from the factory. I've left this stock. I would probably end up swapping this out for a Radian one. I don't have that because I don't have any issues right now, but it's definitely smaller than what I would prefer. Obviously I have no issues, but with no issues I also have no money. Moving forward to the optic of choice, I chose the EOTech XPS2. I chose this over the EXPS2 because I knew I was going to put it on a riser anyways, and the only thing cool about the EXPS2 is that it's on a slight, like, I think half-inch riser that's a QD attachment. And obviously I'm not really going to take the optic off very often, so I didn't see the reason why I needed a QD EOTech. The riser of choice is the Unity Point Absolute riser, which is a 226-inch riser, so it brings it up just a bit. It's not as high as like some of the risers you see, other risers you see from Unity with like a aim point T2 on top of it. I still have to cant my head or tuck it in a little bit to actually see through the optic. So with the XPS2 mounted on the Unity Absolute riser, it does bring the optic height up to 2.26 inches.
That's quite big.
So moving down, we have the safety selectors, which I've left stock. I do have some Radiant Talons I've been meaning to throw in there, but the 90-degree throw as it is right now, I don't find it too difficult to turn on and off the safety. Of course, it's ambidextrous on both sides, like I mentioned before. The mag release is ambidextrous. I haven't swapped those out. Those are still the OEM ones in there. Have had no issues hitting the mag release on both my primary hand, and I don't really shoot left-handed, but I did a couple dry fire runs, and this is actually pretty easy to hit. It feels similar to my right hand shooting experience. The last ambidextrous control is the bolt lock and release lever right here, and I do wish it was actually a little bit bigger. I don't think there's any aftermarket options on the market to switch this out. I did have to get used to it. I mean, I've trained with it now, and I don't necessarily have issues hitting it. It does still feel kind of awkward though. I do wish this was kind of like a button to lock back the bolt and release it. I'll go ahead and show you what I mean by being just a little bit awkward. Is that if you have fingers as long as mine, I mean, my hands aren't ginormous, but it does definitely go forward a little bit. As you can see, I actually have to retrace my finger back like this, and I do have to break grip to kind of do that. So it is just a training hurdle you have to get over. I know if you're someone with smaller hands, this might just actually be perfect for you. Moving down further, we have the stock grip that comes with the MCX Spear. I personally think it's okay, but after running it a few more times, I do notice that it generates like almost like a Glock knuckle on my middle finger, as when I try to keep the rifle upright like this, there is kind of a sharp spot that does dig into my middle finger a little bit when I do reloads. It is kind of annoying, and I definitely have a calluses building up on my middle finger, and probably in the near future probably swap this out for what I have on my standard AR-15. And the grip texture on it's really nothing special. Honestly, it feels like your P365 X Micro grip texture, and it has like some weird ribbing on the front of it here. I'm not sure what that's for, maybe like reference point or comfortability, but I don't really notice it and I don't really care for it. And then of course, what's definitely not stock is the trigger. As you can clearly see, that is not the two-stage MCX trigger that comes mil-spec. But honestly, the two-stage trigger that came with it I felt was unnecessarily heavy, and it was a bit mushy. So I am a trigger snob, and I swapped it out for the Trigger Tech MCX trigger, which is significantly better, has adjustable weights, and has little to no take up, very short reset. I'll go ahead and show you the gun is clear, the trigger with the pre-travel, and then break. Go show you the reset. Very short, and you're ready to get your next shot off. With the MCX, I felt that it was a bit mushy around the break, as well as it was unnecessarily heavy. I know triggers are not that important compared to pistols, because obviously you have the 3 points of contact, which makes it easier to control the gun no matter how your trigger press is. But I would notice I would become trigger fatigue over long strings of fire or a bunch of rapid fire. I'm not the only one who said this. I think Lucas from T-Rex Arms also complained about the two-stage trigger. He doesn't normally mind two-stage triggers, but it was mushy and unnecessarily heavy. Another nice thing on the lower receiver is that the magwell is slightly flared. It's nothing too crazy like a competition magwell, but is nicer than not having any. So when it comes to reloads, it's definitely easier than my Palmetto State standard AR-15 that has no magwell at all. So it is nice, but could be a little bit bigger, but that's a training issue. So no need for a competition flared magwell if you get your dry fire reps in. So moving forward on the handguard, I have a basic BCM hand stop. I actually like this for legal reasons, and that it also is really comfortable when tucking the rifle back into my shoulder, and it's just an overall good reference point of of where to put my hand every time. While we're still on the side of the handguard, I have this Magpul QD mount. I have it mounted up towards the front. I might try experimenting and moving towards the back, see how I like it. But currently as it is, I don't see that my hand gets in the way of it as I hold the gun like right here. As well, when I do reloads and reassessing my grip, don't have any issues. And of course up here you have your adjustable gas block, which only has 2 settings for adverse and normal settings. And nice thing to touch if you're retarded like me, it has these minus side up here, plus side on the other opposite side to let you know that having it flipped on the left is normal, having it flipped on the right is adverse. And of course at the top of the handguard on the full Picatinny rail is my Axum SL switch. It's a dual switch. Currently it is only using a light. I haven't gotten my laser of choice yet. I'm thinking about getting the Holoston Iris, or I might just maybe cheap out and get a Sumo Gear, which those are hit and miss but tend to be pretty good. I'll go ahead and show off camera so I don't blind you. A hold and toggle, which is kind of nice, and I actually love the design of it. I know some people don't really like the design. It is kind of like takes up more rail space, but I'm not really using the rail space for anything right now. I have probably just enough space for getting a laser up there, but when I hold my gun with my normal C-clamp, usually it's like this. You also have my thumb sitting right on top of the light switch and just slightly press it on or off. And I did take this to a higher range day where we had a night course, and I didn't have any issues when running around and doing drills at night and accidentally toggling on the light at all. So for me it's pretty comfortable. Like I said before, not currently using the laser button here, which is a toggle switch as well. In the future hopefully I can get some night vision and get a laser set up. So the light in question is my M600 Arasaka full light. The M600 Arasaka light is a 55,000 candela and 500 lumen light. They offer the M300, which is literally half the size of the M600, but I kind of wanted to get the most candela available from Arasaka. For the connectors used for the Unity to the M600 Arasaka is the Unity USB-C end cap, which has a switch on the end cap, so you can also toggle that on or just press and hold. I chose the USB-C connectors for this one, which is relatively new in the market. I know there has been some concerns, people talking about in the forums, like, why switch? If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Well, I like innovation, and the USB-C connectors actually have more power throughput, and they actually have it listed saying some lights on the market not using the USB-C connector, using the standard Surefire, is that they actually are not able to produce the full 55,000 candela because the power is not able to fully transmit to the light. So with the USB-C connectors, you're actually getting the full 55,000 candela. And how I have the M600 Arasaka mounted is on the offset 45-degree Arasaka mount specifically for the MCX, because the MCX has slight cants in the handguard, so you can actually run your light slightly offsetted. And I have it on the right side because I don't see any issues of it, my suppressor getting in the way. I know some people usually switch their light to the left side, but I can't actually really do that comfortably because my QD mount is right there, and that is kind of unfortunate because I would actually have to move my QD mount back. But right now I have had no issues, and because my suppressor is a shorty, it's not like casting a giant shadow. And I haven't burnt myself with my suppressor yet, so I know a lot of people have swapped the light over to use it as like almost a gap between their thigh and the suppressor. And of course at the end of the barrel we have the SIG SLX-C suppressor. This is their Inconel suppressor. That's a flow-through suppressor, and of course with that it launches gases forward. It does not have the best flash signature reduction, but it is the compact one, just takes the bite off a little bit. Definitely is not the most sound suppression one on the market. It is actually still quite loud. It's funny because when we actually go out in the range, the other guys with their suppressors, we actually have to hold the timer up to their gun like really close. But for mine, they don't have to do that because it's still noticeably louder. Like it's probably only taking like 20 or 30 decibels off, like just a little bit of the bite. If I was shooting this with ear pros, it definitely wouldn't feel that good. It'd still get you deaf, but not as fast. And then if you noticed, it could be the specific ammo that I'm running, but I'm running like PMC bronze on a normal basis, and after I stop shooting for about 30 seconds to a minute, I always get like that first shot concussion, like huge fireballs. I think we can show you some clips here of like what I mean, but this thing shoots massive fireballs, especially when it was wet under humid conditions. It shot fireballs like crazy. Okay, so night has fallen upon us. This has been sitting for like an hour on our range session today, and let's see the first shot fireball that this is known for. That was quite big. That sounded significantly louder, but that was a huge fireball. I could see it on my optic.
Actually went out of the screen.
There was two big ass blasts in there. Wow.
I don't think your first one was it though.
The first one did
Is
it.
your second
did it?
or your fourth one?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
That was the first one.
No.
But this is not SIG's fault, surprisingly here. And I was trying to go for the shortest and lightest setup possible because I already knew this was going to be on the heavier side. And obviously, what I traded up for that was flash signature and sound suppression. If you run a full size or the full size SLX suppressor, you should notice a lot better results on sound and flash signature. And the one I chose specifically is the QD one here. I might have to blur this out before the YouTube ATF comes after me. Here is the QD suppressor, which is really nice. Has not walked off on me. It's pretty nice. No carbon lock after 1,000+ rounds. I'm able to unscrew it pretty easily. And then while I'm here, I can show you the 3-prong flash hider, which works just as good as a standard birdcage one. It's nothing too special. Doesn't reduce recoil by any means. It's not like the Surefire War Comp. It looks like a baby Surefire War Comp, but it actually doesn't really help with recoil reduction that much. And I've shot next to some guys with the Surefire War Comp at the end, and those are extremely concussive. And this is just as like any other A2 flash hider or birdcage on the market. But the reason why SIG designed it with this is because it is made to attach their suppressor lineup like that. So that's basically my full breakdown of the attachments and why I chose these specifically. But if you have more questions on them, let us know in the comments below and I can try to answer those the best I can. But now into the actual review or my experience with the gun itself. So I am actually well above 2,000 rounds on the MCX Spear LT at this point. So I definitely have a well broken in gun that I can actually say, unlike just getting a review copy out and saying 100 rounds and saying it's a great rifle. The thing I really have grown to like is the fully ambidextrous controls. It helped with whenever I had a malfunction, I could actually lock it back with one hand and actually clear it pretty quickly without having to actually like kneel down on the ground and use both hands. The best part about the ambidextrous controls is definitely being able to manipulate the safety selector with your index finger. So after you're done shooting a drill, you can instantly flip it up like that. So during my 2,000 rounds of running this gun, I did run it suppressed, and it was pretty good actually. I didn't actually have very much gas thrown back at me, and I was able to breathe right after the drill. I know we have a traditional suppressor on another DI gun. Of course, it's a traditional suppressor. I'm not quite sure how a traditional suppressor would perform on the MCX Spear. I do not have a muzzle device to mount that. So with the free flow suppressor and the piston driven style platform, gas is very well manageable and the recoil was pretty decent, pretty on par with your standard DI AR-15 gun, minus the gas being thrown back at your face. So you don't have to worry about losing 5 years of your life post-shooting drill by inhaling some toxic fumes. Well, the gas is very well managed. One thing to note about the adjustable gas block is there's really only 2 settings on it. Even though the gas is very well managed on a flow-through suppressor with the piston system, however, with the adjustable gas block, I want to caveat that the adjustability, like it's only got really just 2 settings, and that's just normal and adverse. And adverse is really nothing special. Basically what that really turns into is an overgas system just to ensure that the next round cycles properly. Really nothing too special. It just basically turns into an overgassed DI gun. Just something to note, not like true adjustable. Like when I think about adjustability, I think about like fine tuning with a gas block and all that stuff, but this is definitely set up to run with the SLX suppressors, so I'm not quite sure how this gun would actually perform with the non-SLX or flow-through suppressor. The feature I found myself actually using the most on this gun over time was actually the folding feature. I never really shot with it folded because I mean it's kind of not really great to shoot like this unless you know you're one of those Chicago kids with a buffer tube that's just missing a stock. The ease of storage is pretty great. Like when I'm at home and I want to just store this somewhere, a tight space, I can actually just fold it and shorten the length and take off the suppressor. Or especially when I go to the range, anytime we're doing rifle drills or we're doing videos on rifle stuff in general, it's pretty easy to put in the Pelican case and not have to disassemble. I noticed that Zach and Brandon on the channel, they don't have the folding capabilities, so they actually have to disassemble their rifles every time they store it. I'm a lazy person. I like that I could just fold it and unfold it. The last thing I really have enjoyed is the flared magwell. I suck at reloads, and anything I can help to aid my reloads, especially on a rifle, which is simply something I don't train enough. Now it's time to talk about things that I really don't like about the MCX, and over time these are some things I discovered that are just not that great. So starting off with the number one obvious is the weight. I took this to a 10-hour course, 2 days worth of training, 10 hours each, and my back was blown out. My lower back was not having a great time with all the weight of this, even though I'm using a 2-point sling setup. And then something that I really noticed was any course of fire where I had to run around a lot or hold up the rifle for a prolonged amount of time, my shoulders, my support hand shoulder was getting really fatigued. That's probably just a sign I need to get stronger. I need to work out more, obviously. What ended up happening when I got fatigued was my accuracy was obviously falling off. And essentially what would happen is I would definitely do a Where's Spider-Man type of motion, trying to just lock on to the target. I can definitely tell you, as an average person running this for 2 days straight and 10 hours each, I got really tired running this gun. So the next issue that I found, which I found pretty early on when trying out this rifle, and no one really talks about this on the internet. I might be the first person talking about this because I tried scouring forums, I tried finding YouTube videos, could not find anyone else having this issue. But I'll go ahead and demonstrate. This right here is a First Form Gen 3 Magpul PMAG. First Form is just the company that sent out to us. Thank you, First Form. We love your drinks and you keep me up at night. So I'll go ahead and seat that. You can see it locks in, doesn't come out. So here is a Gen 2 PMAG. You pick this up for like $10 or whatever. Put this in here. It doesn't seat. As you can clearly see, I smacked it in there and still came out. So no matter what you do with this Gen 2 mags, they will not seat. I found this pretty early on in the lifespan of the rifle when I first took it out to the range and I wanted to, load up more magazines than just the base Gen 3 that came out with it. And I noticed that the next round wasn't cycling. So I was like, oh no, did I just buy a lemon? No, it just turns out it does not like any other magazine other than a Gen 3 PMAG for its plastic magazines. It does take the metal magazines that you find in your Vietnam era rifles, so maybe those 1960 FUDs might be onto something. Why this is a problem is because imagine, let's go extreme scenarios. Start off is end of the world and the only thing you can find is Gen 2 mags, because that I think is the most popular mags out there because they're simply cheaper. You have the MCX. Guess what? You cannot use those magazines unless you're like holding the bottom just to try and ensure that the magazine stays seated to properly cycle the next round. Another problem is on the channel, Brandon and Zach also run the majority of their magazines as Gen 2 PMAGs because that's what they just had before and all of their guns run it fine. But for some reason, my $2,000 MCX cannot take standard Gen 2 magazines while a $600 PSA or an Aero Franken build can take the Gen 2 mags no problem. And you would think, oh no, well this is a premium gun, it should get the highest quality or latest generation of tech. Well, recently we got a VK1 on the channel, which is a pretty nice rifle, scratches the more upper echelon side of rifles, pretty good gun. It's a piston driven gun as well. Guess what? It takes Gen 2 mags, no problem. So it's not really an excuse. I have seen a few comments on the channel when we talked about this is your MCX must be out of spec because mine takes Gen 2 mags. To me, to respond to that is, are you sure they're Gen 2 mags? We went to a gun store in Ohio post Ohio Range Day. We found an MCX Spear there. The same model as mine, like an 11.5 SBR. I asked the gun clerk, hey, my MCX Spear does not take Gen 2 mags. Just want to know if mine is out of spec or not. And we went and grabbed a Gen 2 mag, stuck it in that bit, and it still fell out. And let's say those are out of spec too. Let's say those are also out of spec. And that's not necessarily good either because that's a quality control issue on SIG's side. So that must mean there's a bunch of out of spec MCXs running around in the world, and that's not good. Of course, you know how SIG is, they'll never own up to it, and we'll never know if it's truly an issue or not. What if mine is not out of spec? Yours is out of spec, and that allows it to take Gen 2 mags, inverse. But yeah, it really is no excuse why a $2,000 rifle cannot take whatever standard AR-15 mags I throw in it. Okay. So this is actually the part where I talk about the catastrophic malfunction with the MCX.
Oh, I got stuck again.
You got stuck again?
Why are you worried? Yeah, it's getting stuck. It's gunky. It's like rough.
Oh, it's stuck.
Yep.
Fuck.
Send it. Okay. Lock up. This is running STVs. It's like I shook something out. It's a piece of shit.
So this is something I discovered pretty early on in the rifle's lifespan, probably like, I don't know, a few hundred-ish rounds in, when I ran out of my PMC bronze and ammo was like really expensive, like last year or something like that, I discovered STV Patriot Sports from Patriot Supply. It did work for a little bit. However, over time, after like 100 or so rounds in, it actually completely locked up my bolt carrier group. So bad that I actually had to get a completely new bolt carrier group because it was absolutely stuck and gunked up. A little off story part is when I actually got the new bolt carrier group is SIG actually sent me a lemon. So the pin that holds in the plunger, or the piece that moves and pushes the casing off the extractor, that pin fell out immediately. So after every round, the brass was just getting stuck on the extractor. It was not properly extracting and launching off and shooting at 3 o'clock. I actually had to use an extra pin I had on hand, and place it in there to get it to work properly. So basically, from factory, I got a bad BCG with a out of spec pin. So I'm not sure who was working that day. It was clearly Friday, and that person had better things to do. How did it get stuck and gunked up? Well, the striker pin actually was ripping out the primers from these rounds and throwing it back into the BCG and slowly fouling it up throughout each round. I'll go ahead and show pictures of kind of what that looked like and how much was actually being ripped out. You can see there's like these like very small like circle chunks that are being ripped out, which was the primers, and this was the only ammo that was happening with. However, this is not a valid excuse. First of all, this is a $2,000 gun, something you would think you could depend your life on, and the world goes to shit off the grid. Why can this not run it? So you would think, you know, it's the ammo supplier fault, right? Because that's the only ammo brand that doesn't run through the MCX. Why don't you buy better ammo? Well, I think this is more SIG's fault, because the SIG MCX is the only gun that cannot run it out of our entire arsenal. This sub $500 PSA runs it. This Frankenstein Aero Precision runs it. It's like $1,000 build, nothing too crazy. This cheap ass Colt we have here that's like $400 runs it, and this other PSA build over here runs it just fine. So why is it that these cheap guns can run whatever ammo I throw in it, with this high quality gun that SIG touts as like the military gun that the police force can use, militaries can use, but it can't run whatever ammo you throw in it? So this gun is basically not end of the world proof or even war proof, I believe. So here I grabbed the VK1 from Vector Industries, which is around a similar price point, about $2,500 to $2,400. It's also a short stroke piston driven gun, and it has relatively the same tolerances, I believe. And guess what? It can run the STVs just fine. No hiccups, no issues, no fouling of the bolt carrier group where it's getting locked up. And this is a gun that's basically the same thing as the MCX, but so far has proven to be a little bit better. So I'm going to hear a lot about this, I'm sure, in the comments, but guns are simply tools. This is not like a Lamborghini or Ferrari where it demands 91 or 93 octane fuel and you can't put regular in it. This should honestly be able to chew up whatever I throw in it, because that's like saying like high quality power tools can't work on shitty bolts. That's like, what's the point of getting a high quality tool? This being a high quality tool should honestly work with whatever I throw at it. It's unexcusable that all these cheaper guns behind me can run whatever ammo I throw at it, but this can only take specific ammos with certain types of primers. The specific ammo that I've ran through this so far with no issues is PMC bronze, Winchester white box, and hot munitions. So the first bolt carrier group, like I mentioned, was completely seized, and like I could not remove any of the components from it, so there was no way I could do anything. So it was basically shot. Like I had to get a completely new one. And funny enough, you think, oh, maybe the first one was out of spec, that's why those primers are being ripped. Nope. The second bolt carrier group did the exact same thing within one magazine. After one magazine, it already started getting seized up a little bit. Obviously, I was able to notice that right away and clean it out before it got completely seized like the first one. So immediately I looked to different ammo solutions, and of course PMC, Winchester white box, and hot munitions ran successfully. So it does suck. I have to buy specific ammo types just to make sure that the gun is running, and any new brand I just have to hopefully pray that it's not using soft primers that are being ripped back into the BCG and locking it up. I do think this is partly due into design of how the striker pin is set up. With the striker pin, I'll probably pull up an image here and show you the striker pin is actually more blunt on the MCXs. However, you look at like one on a standard AR-15 or the one from the VK1, it's actually more of a sharper like needle towards the end. So I think that blunt MCX striker pin is actually like punching a hole through the primer and then ripping it out of the casing. So that, I believe, is what the design issue is. I'm not sure if there are aftermarket striker fire pins out there to solve the issue, but it does suck that you would have to remedy that by going that aftermarket solution for an internal piece of the gun. So the next thing I didn't like about the MCX was the two-stage trigger that came with it. It was very mushy. I did mention this before. It was very mushy and rather heavy two-stage trigger. I know triggers aren't that important when it comes to AR-15 because obviously more contact points and easier to hold it compared to a pistol, but you know, this is kind of my dream build, so I swapped it out for the Trigger Tech MCX two-stage trigger. This is a phenomenal trigger. This is probably what I would run in all my AR-15s in the future. Something to know with the stock trigger when it was in there is that I could definitely feel the trigger fatigue coming. It was just like pretty heavy and very mushy. I already said this earlier, but I know Lucas Bakken from TRX Arms was complaining about the trigger, and he's a phenomenal shooter, way better than I'll probably ever be, and he did not like that trigger.
The LT comes with a two-stage trigger that I hate. Not a big fan. It's pretty heavy, and timing shots with it, it's kind of tricky.
I know SIG labels it as their cool flat blade performance trigger, but honestly it does suck right out of the box. If you were to do any notable upgrades to the MCX, I think the trigger would be your first upgrade of choice. Moving to the next thing I didn't like. There's a lot of things I don't like, unfortunately, that I learned over the course of 2,000 rounds. There is like this sharp spot kind of by the underside of the trigger guard here. I noticed this when I had to reload, try to keep the rifle upright, and it would actually dig into my middle finger. I touched on this a little bit later, earlier in the video, and it did create a hot spot on my middle finger. If I were you and you wanted to not have the hot spot, definitely swap out for an aftermarket grip. Is a bit more of a nitpicky thing, and this may not affect all shooters. To me, spending $2,000 on a rifle, I would expect better grip ergonomics. Well, that was basically my experience with the MCX. Love and hate relationship for sure. Hope other owners out there have a better time than I did, or any prospect buyers out there have a better future than I will. Now, is the MCX Spear LT better than your standard budget build or PSA build that you can get? Yes, in terms of material quality, the metals on here and the fitment, there's no denying that's really good, as well as the barrel, you know, being a cold hammer forged carbon steel barrel, that's going to definitely outlast any standard stainless steel barrel that you find in your local budget build. But no, it's not going to make you a better shooter. Most AR-15s honestly feel pretty similar, other than, you know, whatever trigger is coming in it. The recoil impulse is much of like any standard DI AR-15 out there on the market. It's nothing too crazy. It's really manageable and easy to control. I will definitely like to note that I mentioned earlier that the weight can be a detriment, especially with moving and doing of transitions. It does feel a little awkward manipulating the weight because it's rather front heavy. If you're into cars, like it's like having the engine mounted in front of the axles and it causes understeer. I feel like that's the same thing with how the weight is all shifted to the front beyond the handguard. So no, ultimately this is not going to make you a better shooter. Just go out there and get proper training on whatever build you got. Just a standard AR-15, quality optic, that's all you really need. And if you do want to get MCX, you can definitely just transfer those skills over and nothing's really going to change. So now, would I recommend you go out and spend your hard-earned Robux on the SIG MCX Spear LT? No. I don't think you should spend the full price on it. I think if you get one for a good deal, maybe it's worth it. But I'd probably ensure you have a better end-of-the-world gun than this, because clearly, as the issues I mentioned before, can't take all types of ammo, especially ones like soft primers. Doesn't take Gen 2 magazines, and it's really heavy and rather expensive. It doesn't really do anything different than other standard AR-15 platforms out there. If you're not going to run a suppressor, or you just got the gun by itself and you don't have the suppressor, it's ultimately pointless. Short stroke piston systems definitely benefit from running it suppressed, obviously with a better gas management than a DI system. And the last issue, which really just depends on if you're lucky or not, is the quality control. Obviously with the bendy barrel issues out there, and maybe other people reporting that their Gen 2 magazines are working and mine isn't, just means that the quality control is not very good. And as you know how business works, SIG is probably never going to make a claim on that, because that's not really good for business, as you know. So no, I cannot recommend spending $2,000 or more on this gun. Luckily for me, I did get this for a pretty good discount. That's why I got it. But at the end of the day, it was still rather expensive. I think the average MSRP is about $2,500 to $2,600. I managed to snag this one for a little bit over $2,000. So for my build, it cost me about $4,500, but that's because I got the MCX for $500 off and the SLX suppressor for $500 off. So ultimately, the real price without sales is $5,500. So ultimately, what I'm going to say is just like T-Rex arms, get a Glock and train. Not really, but just get your standard AR-15 with whatever budget you have. Well, that's $1,000 all the way up to $5,000. Just train with the gear that you can attain. Just train with whatever AR-15 or AR style you can get your hands on. What really depends on is the type of training you're getting. Are you getting quality training, putting in the good habits, putting in the work? So if you can train well with a $5,000 rifle, hopefully you can also do the same performance with the $500. So what I'm ultimately saying is it really just boils down to a skill issue. Buying a really expensive gun like this is not going to solve any of your issues. So get out there, get good, stay good, leave a like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.